Welcome to the Farming Without the Bank podcast, the show with a no BS approach to money, hosted by a farm strategy expert and authorized IBC practitioner. Join us as we get real and expose the flaws of traditional financial institutions in order to help farmers take control of their finances, create peace of mind, grow their wealth, and leave a legacy. Now, here's your host, Mary Jo Ehrman.
Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. You have all been asking for client interviews. You want to hear from people that are using Farming Without the Bank, how it's going. And so today is our first guest, and I have on Jeff Pierce from Sumner, Nebraska, where he farms and ranches. Jeff has been a client since 2016. So he will have some pretty decent insight for you because he was one of my first clients after I started really getting the book out there. So welcome, Jeff, and thanks for taking the time to share.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me, I'm sure you found the book on Facebook, right?
Yeah, that is, I think, initially where I first saw the ad, yeah.
Yeah, that is typically where most people in 2016 found the book. I wasn't doing a whole lot of speaking then, and I don't even know if podcasts existed. I'm sure that they did, but I didn't know about them.
I wasn't listening to them yet then either. So.
Yeah. Okay. So what made you, when you saw the Facebook ad, what made you go, I need to read that book?
Yeah, initially, I think what got me interested, I guess, was I was kind of a Dave Ramsey follower at the time. So I'd actually read his book as I was finishing up college and thought, you know, these principles make a lot of sense. This is what I want to do. I guess it bothered me year to year to be borrowing money to do the farming thing because it just seemed like that was a complete no-no in his methodology, I guess. So I saw the title of the book and thought, well, I'll just order it and read it and see what it's about, I guess.
Oh my gosh. So this is my first time hearing about Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
In 2016, I didn't ask nearly as many questions as I asked today in a meeting.
Sure.
So that's interesting. So now the question is, when you read the book, what did you think when I'm talking about whole life insurance and Dave Ramsey hates whole life insurance?
Yeah, that was the first hurdle for me to get over, I guess. But I stuck with it, I guess. I read your book, and then I read Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker, as well. And I guess understanding kind of the nuts and bolts of the policies and how the actuaries kind of engineer the policies and what they're structured to do gave me the confidence to at least give it a try and to kind of rethink whole life, I guess, as a tool.
So where did you see the actuarial stuff at? What were you researching that? Because Nelson doesn't talk about that in his book.
I think just that he mentions the actuaries are
the tables
of the policies, yeah, and how how the policies are structured to work and how they're different from term life and how the products differ, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So did you do that before you called me, or did you do that after we visited? Do you remember?
As far as reading Nelson's book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I read that before we visited the first time, yeah.
Okay. All right. So were you a little bit scared to visit with me?
Not too bad. I think after I'd read those, it changed a lot of the misconceptions I had about what whole life was, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good thing for listeners. Mm-hmm. That if you're still questioning what it is and if Mary Jo is legit, go and grab Nelson's book and do just a little bit more reading because his book is only 100 pages too, and it's big print. It is not little print. So it's probably more like 50 pages, and his book is a pretty quick read as well. But
yes. I
always say it, that my book is a complement to Nelson's book. It is not meant to replace Nelson's book. Okay, so that's interesting. Are you farming with family?
Yeah, I am. So I was born and raised here around Sumner, and my parents farm outside of Sumner, and then I farm and ranch currently on my mom's side of the family with an uncle. So most of the work that I do right now is through leasing his cows and calves and then farming the ground that he used to take care of. So.
Okay. So after you read the book, did you go to them and say, hey, I read this awesome book, and then did they give you some not so awesome feedback?
I don't think it wasn't bad feedback. They didn't buy into it as quickly as I have, I guess. And it was kind of, I don't know. They didn't give me bad feedback, I guess, but it was definitely like, make sure you research it and figure out what you're doing, So.
Yeah. Have you had other people just outside of even family that you've shared it with that maybe thought you were a little crazy?
Yeah, I have shared it with a few people, and I think most of them initially kind of get on board with it, but getting people to read the books and do their own due diligence and research is the real challenge, I think.
Yeah.
I guess the one negative feedback I would get from people is maybe that they question why everybody's not doing it if it's such a good deal. Mm-hmm. So I've always kind of, I don't know if I've ever thought that that's a good enough reason to not check it out, though, because there's probably a lot of things we should be doing that nobody's doing. So,
oh my gosh, I love that response because it's very true. I mean, everything was too good to be true at one time, right? I mean, microwaves, ovens, the world is round and not flat. Like it's all been airplanes. It's all been too good to be true. But if nobody ever tries it, and it's so old. Like I've talked about this too a million times, that whole life is 150 years old. IRAs and 401ks are only 45 years old. So what's traditional? Traditional is not 401ks, IRAs, and investing in the market. So we think it's traditional because it's what we grew up with, but it's absolutely not traditional.
Yeah. We're so conditioned in that saving and spending mentality that we just don't think of other options, or we don't know that there's any other options out there. But
right. So Jeff, you are like one of my easiest clients on the planet. I'm not even going to lie. Like it's rare that you call with questions. It's rare that you call with requests of using money, paying stuff back, because you're doing a lot of that on your own, right?
Yeah, I am. I guess it's been really simple to use. I mean, once we set it up, you guys sent out a sheet that was typed up with exactly what I needed to do to borrow the money. And I mean, it was highlighted forms with what I filled out and what I put where. And once I got that initial part set up, I think even after that, I went to the online portal once the bank account and all that was set up. And like borrowing and paying back is super easy. I mean, it couldn't really be any easier. You go click a few buttons and sign, and then within 3 to 4 days at the longest right now, I think the money I need is in the bank account to use. So
awesome. And nobody asks what you're using it for. Nobody cares when you pay it back.
Yeah, which is great. You don't have to go sit down with the banker and go through a balance sheet and cash flow. And I guess one thing to that though is it does require some responsibility on your part with the policy to make sure you're using it, not doing things that don't make sense, and making sure that you're kind of running the economics and profit loss and stuff like that, so that you know you're not just kind of throwing the money away without a good plan to pay it back and be an honest banker with yourself. So,
are you creating amortization schedules, or are you mainly just using it for operating?
Right now, it's just with operating so far. In the future, I definitely hope to kind of set up some schedules and start using it for capital purchases of equipment or cattle or even land if it seems like we can cash flow it and make that work and it's a good idea. But yeah, right now it's just been a line of credit for me. So I borrow every year and pay back all I can.
Is it your entire line of credit?
Not quite. We're really close. I think in the next year, actually, we could even get to the point where it takes care of the entire line of credit for me. So
awesome. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, we're getting there. So it's been good. I think we're coming on maybe 4 or 5 years into it now, but it's working great. So
awesome. And how old are you, Jeff?
30.
Okay. So you were 26, 27 when we started?
26, I think is where I was. Yep.
And not married and no kids at the time. And so now we have a wife and a baby on the way.
That's correct. Yep. February 1st. So
yeah, things will change dramatically. But
yeah, absolutely.
What is kind of nice is we didn't set that policy up too high. So even with the big changes of a wife and a baby, we can still afford the policy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Awesome. Okay. So what does the bank think?
Or have you not told them? Said anything. Well, I know they know it because when I sit down and do the balance sheet with them, I have just a ridiculous amount of cash value and insurance. But I don't think they haven't really asked any questions yet.
Oh, so, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because you're able to make all your payments there. Do you have a lot of loans with the bank still?
I do not. No, I was only using them for a line of credit as well. So.
So pretty soon.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, I'm going to actually get one out of there.
That's right. Yep. Excited for that for sure.
Yeah. Until you buy some land. And then you might need them again.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I have a good relationship with my banker, so I'm not worried about that, but yeah.
That's good. So how is it rewarding to be able to say, hey, I'm in control of this loan. I'm in control of the paybacks. Because if I remember correctly, you had a bit of a tough year a year or two ago, and you had to slow that payback down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been a great part about it, is that flexibility. A couple of years ago, we had a pretty significant hailstorm roll through the area and caught most of the fields that I farm. And so it was, a bad enough hailstorm that all the yields were not where they should be, but it wasn't a bad enough hailstorm that insurance was going to kick in. So it was kind of a wash that year. And so not having all the available capital to pay it back it worked out fine. Nobody came asking questions or knocking on the door or wanting to sell off any assets or anything like that. It was just, we'll recover from this next year and get caught up again. So.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So did it take you a whole year to get caught up?
In the next year, I guess we got caught up. So, yeah.
Okay. So you had some money on cash value that was not paid back. And so you just had to use a little more money from the bank that following year off of their line of credit. And then we got back to where we needed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Have you felt any of I know we talked at one point and you were stuck out in a field all day because water came up on you.
Yeah.
But has the rain and all that, the weather related stuff affected you this year?
I think everywhere in the Midwest, I guess, has been a challenge in 2019. So, but we're almost to the end of it, I guess. So are
you going to be able to pay back your loans this year?
Yeah, I think so. Yep. I think it was good this year. So yeah, it was a challenging year. Things went well, but it was late planning and all the flooding that we dealt with in Nebraska was certainly a challenge. Just hope we're not setting up for that again next year, but we'll see how it goes. So.
Awesome. Okay, I don't have any other huge questions. Do you have any advice for anybody that might be listening and hesitant to read the book? Like, it's not hard, right?
No, it's not. I that's the first thing, I guess, is just sit down and read both the books, kind of wrap your mind around how it works. I kind of continually find myself trying to reread the books about once a year just to kind of review, I guess, the thinking behind it, because it's pretty easy to not think about how to properly leverage your money, like the book preaches. And so I try to review it and learn a little more every year to stay in that line of thinking, I guess. But I guess don't be afraid of the initial outlay of that money. You'll get access to it right away.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that is something great to bring up, because I find that people are very concerned about, am I really going to get that money in 7 to 10 days or 30 days? In your case, your company is 30 days. Am I really going to get that money in 30 days, or are they going to take it?
Yeah. It's I think when I first started the policy, I don't think I left it in there. As soon as I could borrow it, I borrowed it that year. And it was, real simple to get. So.
Yeah. And you do have to put up some capital, and we are doing that in exchange for death benefit. But now your wife and baby are going to have some death benefit if something happens to you.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't hurt. Giving up access to a little bit of that money did not hurt you in the long run.
No, not at all. And I think it's important to look at, the leverage of that money over the long haul with that compounding interest on it is far outweighs the little bit of money that you don't have access to on the front end of the policy.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important too I'm going to just trickle back a sec and talk about the fact that you're reading that book every year. And so I try to read Nelson's book at least every year. I'm not the perfect student, because if I was perfect, I would be reading Nelson's book every month. But it's really funny, after even 10 years of doing this, I can go back to Nelson's book and say, oh my gosh, he had that in there. Because if you would have asked, a lot of times if you ask Nelson a question, he would say, it's in the book. Go read the book. Like, I already read the book, right? But you don't always see everything in there. So even though you're reading the book every year, you're catching new things. And I know you're listening to the podcast all the time. So you're catching new things and new ways of how to implement and how to use that money and how to leverage your dollar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they call it the infinite banking concept because the number of ways you can use it are really infinite. And you start looking at the things down the road that you can do with self-insuring yourself and whether it's capital purchases or even the way he talks about transitioning that to the younger generation's tax-free. I mean, yeah, he thought of a lot of things, I guess, when he wrote that book, and it's helpful to continue rereading it.
And it's funny because he was teaching seminars and they finally talked him into doing the book. But to think about the fact that that book applies even 20 years later, nothing has really changed. Everything is always going to be relative. But he addressed everything in there without ever making any edits. That blows my mind because my book isn't quite that clear. But it is still, I think it's just important. And I see the value there as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I enjoyed your book a lot just because it brought it around full circle and kind of tied it to farming, which I don't know if I would have done that on my own. So
yeah, and being able to see the numbers and see it in action with operating or land purchases or handing things off, I mean, is that something that you see as a value too, as the kids grow and now hopefully you can be buying out uncles or family? And then being able to create an operation that you can hand off without the debt.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of research for me to probably still do in that area, but yeah, definitely down the road, kind of building an operation that stands the test of time, I guess, is pretty appealing. I guess if we're not building something that we can pass down, it's kind of hard to wonder why we're working so hard at it, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Which is what everybody's doing. Right. Let's get up and bust our butt all day. But then at the end of the day, we might not have anything. And I always say, we build and then the next generation has to buy it. So we end up draining that. And then we start over and then it comes down to the bottom and we keep starting over. When in fact, we could just keep it going. And if we did it correctly, not have the stress of today's financial concerns. Because today, we have some massive financial concerns in the farming industry. And if we didn't have the financial stress of those things, could we be in a better position? Even, let me ask you this, and I do not know the answer to this question, so this could be a loaded question. But with the commodity markets where they are, has having that loan in your policy allowed you to hold grain a little longer or hold cows a little longer before you had to sell them?
I guess it probably has. Yeah. Just because I know, I'm not having to having a note come due at the bank or whatever. And if I wanted to hold it longer, I could, I guess. I don't know if that's applied yet or not. Typically at the end of the year before I pay my policy loan off, I make sure I get the bank out of my hair. So I guess it probably has allowed me to do that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, the money that you started the policy with, did you have that? Is that just extra money that you were making every year? Where did that come? Can you share where that came from?
Yeah. So I think I'd been farming a couple of years before I started this. And so that was just cash that I had basically built up in my account from farming. And so I remember the first time I visited with you, you asked what I was going to do with that. I don't remember. Maybe I had like $50,000 in my account or something. And what I would have done was just the next year, I would have wrote all the checks until that was empty. And then it would have started borrowing from my line of credit right after that versus getting that into the policy where I could borrow it from there and then kind of maintain the leverage of that money over the life of it, I guess.
And that is, so I'm going to give Dave Ramsey a kudo there. Yeah, but that is obviously something that you either just knew, like, I've got some extra money. I'm going to stick it in an account and I'm not going to spend it to avoid taxes. So that is something you either learned through Ramsey or something that you just said, hey, I don't need these things, so I'm not going to buy them.
Yeah. No, and I don't want to be too hard on Dave.
Yeah, I don't mind his policy. I like his process Because the Dave Ramsey clients that I have, that we share,
Sure.
They come to me with cash. They always have money because he has taught you how to save and not spend. Mm-hmm. And so now we have some money. And so if we can look past his thought on life insurance, now we have some money to work with. So I don't mind that part of what he's doing at all, because I am not made to do that. My personality is not made to teach you how to not go buy beer when you can't afford beer.
Yeah, right, right. No, he's got great advice for living within your means and budgeting, and I think he's got a lot of things right. I just don't think life insurance is one of those. So.
Yeah. And are you buying things to avoid taxes?
No, not anymore. So.
Were you?
Well, yeah, initially, and that was, I think, an initial frustration I had getting involved in farming, was that it didn't really seem like I'd made that much money at the end of the year. But the tax man said, well, if you want to avoid this, you still need to go spend more. And that was kind of a hard thing to wrap my mind around. So,
and that kind of comes back to Dave as well. Being a Dave follower, you don't want payments. And so in order to avoid taxes, we had to create most times we had to create payments for things if you didn't have the cash to purchase it. And so there's a lot of good that comes out of him for sure. But that's fantastic that you were implementing those as much as you could within the whole farming aspect of it.
Sure. And if I do need to spend money to avoid taxes, I typically want to put it into something that's going to generate revenue and not just a piece of equipment that's going to depreciate over time and lose me money in the long run, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Well, someday maybe you can start holding over calves and start building the herd without having to sell, unless you're already doing that too.
I own a few cows that I run with my dad, and save a few of them, but kind of keeping the cash flowing right now, I guess. So.
Yeah. Good. All right. Any final words to our listeners?
Not that I can think of. We covered it pretty well. Most of the notes I had jotted down. So
we did. I'm sure they'll still have questions, but
sure,
And I thank you to anybody that's listening. I get quite a few requests of people that want to talk to people that have done this. Make sure that I'm legit, that I'll answer the phone when they call. And Jeff is always super nice to give out his number and talk to people.
Yeah, I'm always happy to visit with anyone that has questions or anyone I can kind of help on the way. So Mary Jo's got my number, and
I do. We're not going to give it out on the podcast, but
that's probably a good idea.
But if we have a first meeting and people need it, I will give it out. But, if I would say, Jeff, do I answer the phone when you call? But he never calls me because he reads and he's out there educating himself on his own. So
the few times that I have called, there's always someone there. So
yeah, that's good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and good luck with that new baby.
Yeah, thank you. We're definitely excited. So it'll be here before we know it, I guess. So.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I appreciate you tuning in. If you're listening to this on a podcast app, please leave a review. I would appreciate that very much. And have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Farming Without the Bank podcast. We hope today's episode has inspired you to take control of your finances in new ways. Don't forget to check out our website, farmingwithoutthebank.com. and engage with us on our Facebook page, Farming Without the Bank. Join us next week as we smash more financial myths and empower you to accomplish your financial goals.